We're hanging, Rockin' Pod 2023. I'm Danny Meyers along with Lon Fong. We are part of What's Hot in the Strip Clubs podcast on Pantheon Podcast Network. We have got Dave Glessner with us here today. How you?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
You're like a writer and a little bit of everything, right? I mean, you've been on stage with some bands?
Yeah. Yes, I am not a professional singer by any stretch, but I have been pulled on stage by some bands and done some jumping around and acting like a fool. But yeah, a lot of fun. But yeah, mainly I'm a music journalist. That's my background. Have written for a bunch of magazines, newspapers. I have a podcast now called Talk Louder Podcast. You can find us at talklouderpodcast.com.
Good.
So yeah, basically my background is music journalism and just now starting to get into the podcast realm. We've been doing this for 2 years, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've interviewed, I was reading this, Ozzy Osbourne, Metallica, Kiss, Motley Crue, the Ramones. You have sang on stage with Poison and Buck Cherry. And a little history. His very first concert was the Kiss concert in 1983.
Correct.
The no makeup tour, right? The first
Makeup.
one?
No,
it
was the
tour.
Creatures of the Night tour. But the kicker on that show was, first of all, I was a huge Kiss fan growing up, so I was so excited to finally. My parents wouldn't let me go to concerts when I was really young, so 16 was the first time I was able to go to a concert. So I mowed lawns and saved up my money, and I was all excited to finally see Kiss. And at the time, the band Riot was supposed to be the opening act, so I was really stoked. All right. Well, Riot canceled at the last minute, and they added the Plasmatics.
Wow, Wendy O. Williams, right?
But this is back before the metalheads and the punk rockers got along. So I'm thinking, I was so disappointed. I was like, I don't want to see this punk rock bull crap. And today I'm a huge punk rocker, and I wear that as a badge of honor that the first live band I ever saw was Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics.
Amazing. She was a groundbreaker. That's all I could say.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So cool that you got to see them.
Yeah.
Kiss, you've interviewed legends left and right, and you've been doing this for a while. As you've traveled around, markets are different with what bands are popular, somewhat, right? So it varies. So in Texas, you said you grew up in Texas, right?
Yes, correct.
So you said Kiss was the big influence. Obviously, Texas has such a great rock history from ZZ Top, Stevie Ray Vaughan, so many great artists.
Yeah.
King's X.
Pantera.
How can I forget Pantera?
Yeah.
When you travel around, any markets that stand out to you as rock bastions that stand out to you?
I don't do a lot of traveling with my line of work. Most of my interviews are done remotely over the phone, so I'm fairly stationary. I could tell you I was born and raised in San Antonio, and San Antonio is legendary for being a heavy metal hotbed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I've been in Austin for like 28 years, but prior to that, in my formative years, as a teenager, I was growing up in San Antonio, and we had a DJ on 99.5 KISS FM in San Antonio named Joe the Godfather Anthony. And he was known for, he was at other stations too. I don't want to, somebody's going to hear this today. He was also on such and such.
Nobody listens to us.
But Joe was the kind of guy back when radio DJs were free to bring their personal record collection to work.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he was championing bands like Budgie and the Killer Dwarfs and Moxie.
I opened up for Killer Dwarfs.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
My
yeah.
band did.
He was into bands that were not getting airplay anywhere else. And then some of those bands, like I remember because he was generating airplay for them, they could play the arena in San Antonio before they played arenas anywhere else.
That's fucking awesome.
So we would have like Motley Crue and Queensryche at the arena in San Antonio before they were popular elsewhere because of Joe Anthony.
Wow.
So, you ask if I've been around and seen any hotbeds of certain musical styles. San Antonio it was actually known and still is as the heavy metal capital of the world.
That is awesome. And that shows you the influence and power of DJs, like in general.
In the day, now DJs can't do what he used to do.
Program directors.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you get the same 10 songs on rotation and nobody goes deep and nobody's introducing you to new European heavy metal bands,
Yeah.
So with all the bands you've interviewed, the Ramones. Like they didn't do a ton of interviews. So how'd that happen?
Yeah, that was the Ramones. First of all, I loved them as a band.
Yes.
So when I was in college, I worked at the campus radio station, and I was kind of known as the heavy metal punk rock guy. Okay. So any of the Ramones CDs that came out or whatever, they were given to me.
Awesome.
And I was also writing for the campus newspaper. So through that association, I was connected with the Ramones publicist, who's a woman named Ida Langsam.
Okay.
And so she gave me my first interview with the Ramones for the campus newspaper. And that started a connection. And so there was a time in the early, let's see, this would have been the early to mid 90s when a new generation of punk rock bands was becoming popular. Green Day, Rancid, The Offspring. Yeah. So I reached out to the editor of the San Antonio newspaper where I'd grown up, and I said, hey, I've got an idea for a story. You don't know me, but I've got an idea for a story. And I said, all these punk rock bands are up and coming, and they're all over MTV, and they're selling all the records. They're all over the radio. All the kids are talking about them. What if I got you an interview with Joey Ramone talking, the Godfather of punk rock, so to speak, talking about this new generation of punk rock bands? And they said, if you can get Joey Ramone and you can write half-assed, we'd be interested in seeing what you come up with. So I got the interview with Joey. I wrote the piece, and this is the San Antonio newspaper, so it's not some small-town newspaper. And they published it on the front page of the arts and entertainment section, and that started a relationship that's going to this day.
I want to find that article. I got to go look that up. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Any interviews that took a left turn you weren't expecting? A cool, fun thing you can share with us?
Actually, I was just talking about this with someone else. I interviewed Glen Tipton from Judas Priest one time, and he told me that he never picked up a guitar until he was like 18 or 20 years old. Yeah, I was shocked.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I was totally shocked.
Talk about a prodigy then.
Yeah, I mean, not bad, right? Most people that make the kind of living he's made started when they were 5 or 6 or whatever, So that was one. I can't think off the top of my head of any, major bombshells or whatever that came out of any interview. That one stands out because it kind of shocked me.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So Alon and I did something a few months ago. Because we were looking at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the nominees and stuff that were getting in there. And, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, no disrespect, but not a lot of the music that's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the bands are the same bands that are in strip clubs. Like we couldn't do Carly Simon or something like that. Yeah. Right? So we decided that the strip clubs needed their own music hall of fame. We weren't going to call it rock and roll. It was just going to be the Strip Club Music Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And we did this, and if you look in front of you, there are the top 5. Now, what we did, we pulled DJs, entertainers, managers, everybody from the industry. We said, give us your top 5. Had to be 20 years or older, so 2002 and older, and write it down. So we did this whole thing, and these were the top 5 that came up there. And you got Motley Crue, Def Leppard, 9 Inch Nails, Guns N' Roses, and Prince.
And it's any genre, so
any genre.
Yeah.
So I guess really what I want to ask you, being a rock journalist and being somebody that's been around, what do you think of that list, and who do you think we're missing?
Well, first of all, I'd say that list is pretty spot on. Off the top of my head, you're sorely lacking Buck Cherry.
Yes,
Crazy bitch.
They did get some votes, and not enough to get in there. So
Not this year.
This year they did not. We actually had Josh Todd on our podcast one time. What was that? 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, he did the remix of Crazy Bitch. They did a remix of it.
With a rapper.
With a rapper.
Yeah, I remember that.
I like the original better.
Yeah, me too. But still, first of all, Josh is great, and they have a lot of great strip club songs. They're one of the few, I say younger, but compared to the other bands on the list, bands that have consistently produced strip club classics of late. Right?
Yes.
I would say AC/DC is a band that missed. I was shocked. 9 Inch Nails to me should have been later, because really Closer is their big song for strip clubs.
Yeah.
We said this on the show, that while they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame eventually, I wouldn't have put them in first ballot.
Yeah. You could throw Poison in there.
Yeah.
Talk Dirty to Me.
Yep. A lot of strip club songs. Unskinny Bop. Nothing But a Good Time.
There you go.
Yeah, a lot of good songs from them as well.
Yeah.
Who else? Who is your favorite person to interview?
Oh, man. You know, I have favorites for different reasons. So there's some people that are my favorites just because of their stature and who they are and what they mean to me. And then there are, what I think you're asking is the people that just give you the great conversations. And for me, there's a few. Bret Michaels from Poison, always a great interview. He just has a gift for talking. And he's very sincere and very genuine, and his enthusiasm he just oozes enthusiasm. So I always love talking to Bret, any chance I get. Lemmy was awesome.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Just
I got to meet him.
Brutally honest, super smart.
Yeah.
His sense of humor was just amazing. He stands out for sure. I've had a good interview with Slash.
Okay.
I've interviewed him a few times. One time he was just kind of dry, and then there was another one that was particularly good. Zach Wilde's a great interview.
Yep.
Much like Lemmy in the sense that he just says it like he feels. I like the guys that aren't worried about record company politics and what their publicist is going to say and all that stuff. They just let it rip, you know. So yeah, those guys stand out among.
What about on a personal note for you? I obviously the Ramones was probably big for you, but
yeah, the Ramones big for me. Kiss big for me. Kiss is the band that put me on the path to rock and roll. You know, so I've interviewed Gene twice, Paul once, Peter once. Oddly enough, I've never interviewed Ace, but he's the only one of the band I've actually met.
Oh, okay.
So I met him through a connection. I was able to go hang out in his hotel room for a bit and just take a photo and talk to him briefly. So he's the one guy that I actually had FaceTime with but never got to interview. And the other guys I got to interview but I've never met.
See, mine would be Van Halen, so Roth, and obviously I can't interview Eddie ever.
I should add Roth. I interviewed Roth. He was hilarious.
Yeah, he's such a good storyteller.
Yes, much like Bret Michaels. I interviewed Eddie Van Halen once. The David Lee Roth thing was funny because there was miscommunication due to the time zones. So he called my house and I wasn't there. But my girlfriend, who's now my wife, was spending the night at my apartment. She was asleep on the couch and she calls me frantically at work. And she says, David Lee Roth just called the house and you weren't here and I didn't know what to do. And I said, well, what did he say? And she goes, I didn't pick up. He left a message. And I said, okay, let me get this squared up with his publicist and find out what went on. So I get home and there's this message on my answering machine from David Lee Roth, and it's like, hey, Dave, this is Dave. Are you there? And then he says, well, I guess I missed you. I'll try again later. So I saved that.
Yeah.
And then when we finally caught up later that day, he called and he said, yeah, I was going to call back and just leave you a bunch of answers and tell you to make up the questions.
That's
good.
Awesome.
So that was classic.
I'm
so
jealous.
yeah. Classic.
That is. What is Too Tough to Die?
Too Fast to Die.
Too Fast to Die. Yeah.
Too Fast to Die is a website I started to basically archive a lot of my interviews and photographs, and I've written, album reviews, concert reviews. So at one point, I've had people throughout the years tell me I should write a book, and I always thought the idea of writing a book was just too daunting of a task. I was worried I would never finish it. I just overthought it, and I thought, you know what? I do have a lot of stories, and if I handled them in bite-sized chunks, I could maybe just compile them and put them on a website, and that way my commitment of time is down to just telling a story instead of the whole body of work. So I came up with the website toofasttodie.com, and it's 2 with the numerals, 2 fast and the number 2 fast and number 2 die.com. And it's basically just a glorified archive of some of my rock and roll adventures and interviews I've done over the years and things like that. I wanted to capture all that stuff and save it somehow.
Great idea.
But since we started the podcast 2 years ago, it's kind of been pushed to the back burner. I'm not real active on there, but it's been up for 12 or 14 years or something.
I can't wait to go check it out.
So there's tons of content on there, just nothing real recent because the podcast has become the new,
Sure.
Yeah.
The new outlet.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what a great, fascinating journey you've had. I can't wait to dive into the articles and stuff you've written. Like really, the Joey Ramone with Green Day and all that article I want to read. I'm a rock historian as a fan.
Yeah.
And I really am excited to dive into this.
If you're a Ramones fan and you go to the Too Fast to Die website, look up the one that I did. Joey's brother Mickey Lee. They did an album. It was actually an EP called Sibling Rivalry.
Okay.
And so when that came out, I interviewed Joey, and then I went and I interviewed Mickey, and separately. And then I combined those interviews of them talking about the article or about the album. And I won't spoil the punchline, but Joey Ramone ended up calling me highly pissed off. And it just crushed my universe because he was my hero.
Yeah.
But there's a happy ending, and I'm not going to spoil it. So go to toofasttodie.com and do a search for Joey Ramone, and the Sibling Rivalry article will
I
come
will. I
up.
can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
Hey, well,
Yeah, Dave, we want to thank you for your time, man.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks
plug
for
your
having me.
plug your website or your podcast again.
Podcast is called Talk Louder Podcast, and you can find the website is talklouderpodcast.com. We're all over Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. The podcast is audio and video, so if you can watch it as we speak to our guests and whatnot. We drop a new episode every Wednesday, and my website is toofasttodie.com.
With the numbers.
With the numbers, yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.